joining from San Francisco, who has had her own journey, not necessarily in some of the journeys we've seen before, but she's the mother of a recovering addict. And I thought it'd be really important to have her on this morning to kind of talk about it from that perspective. Most of the calls I get are from mothers calling about their sons and daughters, mostly sons. And those sons can be anywhere from 16 years old to 56 years old. I think being a parent being a parent never ends. It's like it's a lifetime. It's especially when there's addiction or mental health in the family. You're just, you're always vigilant. So good morning and thanks for joining me. And tell me just a little bit about yourself, and I'd love to hear your story. And I'm sure other moms would love to, and other parents would love to hear it too.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate this time and talking to other parents out there who are battling with the disease of addiction in their family units. So 12 years ago, I found out that my son was battling with addiction. We received a call from a parent stating that my son had OD'd in a parking lot in college. And we immediately rushed down to where he was and pulled him out and drug tested him and found out that he was doing several types of drugs, and he entered his first rehab. We went from that first rehab to our second rehab, to our third rehab, to our fourth rehab. And after the fourth rehab, he stayed clean and sober for probably about 3.5, 4 years. And then something triggered him. Things probably were never addressed, like some trauma in his past. And so he started using again, and it was a downward spiral. So fast forwarding through, year 4 to where we are today, my son now is in recovery, but it took a lot to get us there. He actually left the house 2 years ago at almost to the day, and we had no idea where he was. I had set my boundaries of loving him, but I could not love him to death, and I couldn't be a part of that drug world. So I had to let him go and prayed that he would find his recovery. Didn't really hear from him for about 1.5 years, maybe a little bit here or there. Kind of found out some things from other people that knew him, but really had no conversations with him until I finally got a phone call from a social worker in Tulsa and saying that my son had had a stroke, brain bleed, lesions on his heart, and sepsis. And so I immediately
How old was your son when you got that call?
He was 29. So when I finally got to Tulsa, he was in an induced coma, and it was a pretty rough first weekend in Tulsa with him in the ICU stroke victim unit. We thought we were going to lose him, and by the grace of God, we did not. And we made it through the sepsis, the brain bleed, the stroke, and he did have emergency open heart surgery.
Wow.
The main valve in his heart was basically falling off of it was dangling, and the fluid was going into his lungs. And so they had to do an open heart surgery and correct that. So today he is clean and sober, and he's doing very, very well. And as crazy as it sounds, it probably saved his life. And so today I now work for a facility called Sabino Recovery, and I talk to several people in the San Francisco area, from interventionists to clinical workers to psychiatrists, psychologists. And I tell my story a lot. I think it helps a lot of people know that just because you set boundaries does not mean that you don't love your child.
Right.
And a lot of times, or most of the time, when you would go to an AA meeting or an Al-Anon meeting, or whatever you want to say, you're going to hear that same message. My family set boundaries. My family set boundaries. And if you were to talk to somebody who's in recovery, they would say the boundaries are what saved my life. And so here we are today, and I just, I help as many people as I can, and I totally understand what they're going through, and just remember you can love them, but you cannot love them to death. So
Yeah.
that's a little bit about me.
It's a miraculous story, and unfortunately, I don't think it's an uncommon story. As an interventionist, one of the obstacles that I face with families, it's all about the family, and one of the obstacles I face is parents feeling like if they threaten consequences, if they put these hard boundaries in place, they can't get over their intuition that they're hurting their child, they're not helping them, and it's completely counterintuitive.
Yes, yes. And people, I think parents especially get scared that if you were to set this boundary, they're going to go off and they're going to die. But they're going to die no matter what. I mean,
Right.
if you don't set the boundaries or if you set the boundaries, I mean, and as a family, the family suffers too with the disease. And so the family has to get some healthy boundaries, and they have to start their own recovery. And however that's going to be, if it's going to be a support group, or if it's going to be someone else that is going through the same thing and understands it, or going to, I think personally, going to an AA meeting, an open speakers meeting, and listening to someone speak about their alcoholism or their addiction, whatever it may be, and gives them hope to see that that person is still here today. And the reason why is 90%, 95% is that there were boundaries set. And so I think that's really important for families to understand. The other thing for families to understand is you got to educate yourself every day on this disease and understand really what it's about. I'm still learning, and I've been doing this for a long, long time. As a parent coach, I ran a nonprofit. I was a parent coach for a couple facilities and worked with families, and I was constantly learning, and I still am learning. So your qualifier, if you want to say, or the person that you love with truly wants you to have help. They want you to have support. And so I think it's really important that you get that support, and then because the stronger you get, the better off they're going to be in the long run. And it's a win-win situation. I cannot stress that enough.
I think that's a big misconception with families, with parents, that one is that, the first obstacle I get is when I talk to families about going to participate in the treatment center family program or going to Al-Anon, is that, but why? I'm not the addict. I'm not the problem. It's the other person. Or, and my wife always tells the story that when I was in treatment, she went to an Al-Anon meeting, and she kind of went in with all right, these people are going to teach me how to fix him now. And that's not the case at all.
No. It's how to take care of yourself.
Yeah.
How to be able to cope day in and day out with somebody who has a disease. It's like somebody who has cancer. How are you going to maneuver the rest of your life with this type of disease? It's the same thing. It's just addiction.
Yeah. We had some troubles a few years ago with my daughter, some mental illness issues, some addiction issues. She's doing much better now, thank God. But I remember she was in treatment, and my wife and I were standing on the corner of Washington, D.C., and a bus went by, and I looked at my wife and I said, she could just step in front of the bus in an impulse move.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife looks at me and she says, you are getting sicker and sicker as this thing continues. And that's when I started going to Al-Anon. And it really has been an incredible lesson for me. In fact, I am in recovery myself almost 16 years, but Al-Anon and recovering from codependence has almost played a bigger role in my recovery, because I truly believed I had the ability to change other people. That if I were the false belief that if I were a better person or I were a better parent, my daughter would be better, or this one would be better. Now is completely not true.
Right. So when I was running a nonprofit, and it was the support group, and I ran that for about 12 years, the first thing out of a parent's mouth was, what did I do wrong? How did I go wrong? I wasn't a good parent. That's not the case at all. There's a thing called the 3 C's. You didn't cause it, you can't cure it, and you can't control it. Those are the hardest 3 things that a parent has. the parent wants to be able to control it. They want to be able to scoop it up, take care of it, and then it goes away. That's not what happens. It's really up to the person that's suffering with the disease, the alcoholic or the addict. So the only thing you can do is get stronger. I was a parent coach for many, many years at a facility, and I sat in on a group one time, and I think there were about 15 residents in the group, and they found out I was the parent coach. And after the meeting, they all came to me. Every one of them came to me and said, "Are you helping my family? Are you helping my family? They need help. They need support as much as I need support." And I thought that was really interesting because it's really, really true. My son has always stated that, my mom had healthy, loving boundaries. Now, did he like them all the time? Absolutely not. Did he try to manipulate me? All the time. But I stuck to those boundaries, and it was hard. I'm not going to say I didn't have some sleepless nights. I'm not going to say that let's have a party here. That wasn't it at all.
Right.
But I knew that deep in my heart that it was up to him, and he knew where I stood and what I could live with. And thank God he's still with us today. So.
Yeah, no, thank God. It's a miracle that any of us survive. And,
I know.
your son's story is particularly harrowing. One of the things I do in my pre-intervention is I either take families to an Al-Anon meeting, or we do it online now because of coronavirus. And I watch them, and I make them share. I make them share in the sense that I just tell them your name and tell them what's going, just tell them the truth, spill your guts. And people are really receptive to it, that, we're preparing here for an intervention tomorrow. And everyone really gets around them. And I can see by looking at the parents, by looking at the siblings, they are getting so much out of it. There's so much benefit to be had that there's a relief that comes from it. Yet I struggle. It's even harder to get a family member to go to Al-Anon than it is to get an alcoholic to go to AA. And I wish that weren't the case, because there's just so much benefit from it.
Right. There is. There truly is. I don't care what kind of support you get, if it's a grassroots support group like the one I ran for years, or if it's Al-Anon, or if it's Nor-Anon, or any type of group, your church, whatever it may be, and an individual, I would say you have to have support. To me, bottling it up is just, it starts brewing, and it's going to eventually boil over, right? And you have to talk about it. At least I always had to talk about it. And part of the reason why I started the nonprofit too was I wanted to take away the stigma of addiction. I wanted everyone to know that just because this person has this problem does not mean they're a bad person. They're just suffering with a mental health disease. And so I wanted that to be addressed. And so I did a lot of work in my own community trying to take away that stigma. And I think that's, everyone needs to understand that. Like, just because your child has an addiction does not mean you have to close all your curtains in your house and peek out to see what's going on. Hold your head up high, be educated, get support, and, understand really what it's all about. I can promise you, I would win the lottery on this, that an addict or an alcoholic doesn't want to be where they are.
Right.
And there's a lot of shame and guilt that walks around they carry with them, but they have to understand that it truly is a disease like diabetes or cancer, and how are you going to work with it, and how are you going to address it to make it better, is what I think is really important.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I think with the shame work, your analogy of drawing the shades and living in that darkness. One is, I can recall myself in the midst of my addiction, and that's exactly how I was living, with the shades drawn, and that shame. I think that was even more than being an addict, more than being, and I had a lot of addictions, a lot of isms, a lot of character defects, but that shame of feeling I'm a bad person was really my sickness. That's really what kept me safe. I think, for me and I think for family members, getting out there. I mean, you mentioned all these things, and being an example to other families or being an example to other addicts is so empowering to myself and to you, and it's such an essential part of recovery.
It truly, it really is. I mean, you went on a journey, and look where you are today, right? You're doing this recovery talk, you're helping other families, you're living proof that you can make it out of the darkness. And here I am today. No, I did not carry the addiction inside of me, obviously, but I'm a mother who would walk over coals for my child, and
Right.
I love my son, and I'm here today doing what I'm doing, and so it's just word of mouth and making it stronger and stronger. I mean, I really understand there's a pandemic in this country with COVID, but there's truly a pandemic in this country with addiction and mental health and alcohol, all that. And I think the more we talk about it, the more accepted it will be.
The more we normalize the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, any person could be in a dark alley using, and they could be living on Park Avenue. I mean, it doesn't matter. Addiction will take you and it will grab you. And so, there's nothing to be ashamed about. It's just what it is. And so how are we going to deal with that? And that's why I say educate, educate, educate. The war against addiction will only be beat by education and how we work with it in the future. So not to get on my soapbox, but
no, not at all. You're not.
That's how I truly feel. So, so I've been brought here for this reason. I never would have been here if my son hadn't gone down this road, but here I am today. And, it's interesting because my son is my biggest cheerleader, and he is my biggest encyclopedia. So when, we're in contact, I'll call him up and say, hey, I have this is what's going on. And he'll say, okay, well, this is what's going on. And this is what they probably need to do. So,
where's your son now?
He's living in Arizona, and I'm super proud of him, and he's just doing remarkably well. And I used to have wristbands for my nonprofit called Mothers with a Purpose, and he still to this day wears that wristband.
Oh, that's great.
Even out on his heavy days when he was actively using, he still had that wristband on. And he would even say out on his active days of using this, hey, your mom needs to call my mom. Have your mom call my mom. They need support. I mean, no addict or alcoholic want to be doing what they're doing.
No.
It's just
they certainly don't want to be feeling the way they feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they definitely don't want to be breaking their mom and dad's hearts or their family's hearts, and by any means, and have those restless nights. So I'm living proof. So are you.
Yeah. No, you are, and thank you for everything you do. I often come across a lot of sober coaches and things like that, but I've often felt there are not enough people out there that are coaching the families from Al-Anon. And I tell families one of the reasons you have to get involved with Al-Anon, and you're right, there are a lot of different options. There is the church, there is my recovery is very holistic. It's, not only was I an addict, I was a food addict, and I was, so there's many different, it's layers of the onion to it. But one of the reasons I tell families that they need their own recovery is because, there's always a chance that your son or daughter never recovers, or your husband never recovers, and you're going to have to learn to live your life happily, either way.
Absolutely. Yes. I mean, I went a year and a half with not having contact with my child and living my life and carrying on with many Christmas and Thanksgivings, and not that it wasn't hard, but I had to carry on because I had I have other kids, and I had to, take care of my family, and most importantly, take care of me, because if I'm not together, then, it starts to crumble a little bit. So,
right.
You can truly do this if you have, I truly believe if you have support. And there's days that I still call and talk to people about things. So it's just what it is, but it makes me a stronger person. It makes me more educated about what's going on. And so that's why I say education is the key. It's totally the key.
Yeah, no, and this is so great. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation because, all the videos I do, I think having this conversation with a mother who's been through and is on the other side is just so powerful and probably the most important conversation I could have. When I meet with parents, there are two things I hear pretty regularly, and one of them is I hear the mom say, "I haven't slept in 7 years. I haven't slept," and and I've heard addicts and alcoholics in meetings talk about having made amends to their parents, and one of the things the moms do say is, you may have taken the money from my wallet or wrecked the car, all these things, but you took my sleep away. You took my serenity away. Is a big thing.
Absolutely. I used to tell myself every night when I go to bed, this is my time, no one else's time. This is my time to just not think about it, what's going on in the day, and try to rest, because who knows what tomorrow is going to bring. And I would turn my phone on do not disturb, and I would just put it away, because whatever happens in the middle of the night, it's going to be there in the morning. And so that's what I would do. And I was pretty successful at it. And I'm not going to say every night I was able to do that, but a lot of nights, I'd say probably 85% of the nights I did do it. And I just learned to, every night got a little bit better and a little bit better. And so I think one thing I do want to say is that I think trauma is really big, what goes on with your loved one, and to address that trauma is really, really important. Trauma goes with, if you have a child that's living on the streets, or even a child that's living in your house, and, there's some kind of trauma. I really, truly believe there's some kind of trauma that can, what's the right word?
That needs to be addressed. That's the underlying cause. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
There's a great meme which I'll send you. I saw recently, and it was of an iceberg, and 75% of the iceberg's underwater, and it showed the top part of the iceberg's addiction, and then below is trauma, and that's so true. I mean, I think that was my case. I always knew I had trauma from childhood trauma, but it only took me a good 40 years to accept the fact that trauma played a role in my addiction, and now I can see very clearly how a person's childhood trauma, it's just that faulty foundation that keeps getting buried and built on and built on and built on, and it just permeates everything. You become broken.
Right. Yeah. When I got approached by Sabino Recovery, they were like, we'd love you to come work for us, and I'm like, I need to see the facility. And so I visited the facility, and there was just something magical to it and the trauma work that they do. So I truly believe in that I think, and I never really thought about it until I started working for Sabino, which was interesting. I mean, I knew there were things in the past that probably needed to be addressed, but I never really understood the importance of it. And so now I do. And so, I mean, I think there's still some trauma work that needs to be done with my own child. And hopefully we, with him seeing a therapist and working through that, we can get there. And it's okay. I mean, it's not okay, but at least you know where it's coming from. Like, okay, well, now that makes sense, right? So it's, it's
you see the correlation. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
Tell me, before we wrap up, tell us a little bit about Sabino, because I haven't been there, but it really does sound like a magical place, and I've talked about it a little bit. So
Sabino Recovery is based out of Tucson. It's on 144 acres. It's an old boys boarding school, and they are known for their trauma, mental health, and substance abuse programs. They have several modalities that they use, from somatic experiencing to brain spotting to EMDR. They have a really, really outstanding equestrian facility, and they do EMDR with that. So they have outstanding clinicians, psychiatrists. We just hired 2 individuals to our facility that are outstanding, a Dr. Aaron Wilson, who's a psychiatrist, and a Bill Reynolds, who's a physician assistant. And they both have a lot of trauma background experience. So really, really excited about Sabino. I truly love it. It's easy to talk about, and when you believe in something, right, it's very easy. So hopefully we'll get you out there for a tour, Mark. I think it'd be really good for you to see it.
I would love to see it.
Yeah, it's really a great facility, and but they're really known for their trauma work. So that's
and really, and that is hugely important.
Yes, and they also do eating disorders. They address eating disorders too, and we have a holistic naturopathic approach to that too.
Yeah, that's great. No, I appreciate it. What's the website for Sabino?
SabinoRecovery.com.
Great. So, well, thanks for having this conversation. And again, I really think it's just so important for mothers to see, and hear other mothers talking about it. And it's so counterintuitive. And, I also, when I first started going to Al-Anon, I'd say, it's one thing if I'm working with some guy I met in AA and he doesn't want to get sober, I say, all right, well, call me from jail. What can I tell you? But when it's your own kid, it's like, that is just not, because you walk into Al-Anon or other meetings, they start saying your kid has their own higher power, let go, let God. They hit you with the slogans. And these were slogans I embraced and slogans I'd known for years, but all of a sudden I'm going, don't tell me slogans. It's my kid. But the truth is, when I finally did surrender, when I finally did give up trying to control her situation and make her better, she got better.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a funky concept, especially for a parent, that I'm going to do, I'm going to do what's completely counterintuitive, because I, as parents, we are hardwired to save our children, hardwired. And it starts the minute they come home from the hospital. I've used this example before. They're in the crib and they're crying, and the doctor and parents with more experience say, "Oh, let them cry a little bit. It's fine. It's good for them. Let them." But we just rob them of that experience, and
because we want to control it all. We want to control everything.
And it kills us to see them unhappy. And then if you're like me and I see my daughter's unhappy, I said, oh, what am I doing wrong? How have I, I start blaming myself and all of that. But yeah, it is really about the letting go. And when I let go and I surrendered, and she got, she got better. But I'll tell you this, the first time I went to an Al-Anon meeting as a guest with my wife, they were going around the room and everybody was talking about their qualifier. And it was my first time in an Al-Anon meeting, and I didn't know what that was. And then at some point during the meeting, it occurs to me, holy shit, I'm the qualifier.
Well, you do great things in this world, and I think we're very thankful to have you. So thank you for everything you're doing. And if there's anybody I can help, or if anybody wants to reach out to me and just say, hey, just need a little bit of support or whatever, I truly would love to help them. So,
plenty of people in need of it.
Yes, it's my mission in life at this, probably forever now. So I'm here to help. So just like you. So thank you.
Thank you. And thanks for doing this. And enjoy the rest of the day and have a great week.
You too, Mark. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.